a time of prayer, or do you have a real, genuine walk with God? That's what we're learning about. As Moses goes through this phase and this particular stage of his life, we find that his walk, his time, his communication begins to grow in a tremendous way. Exodus chapter 2 is an amazing passage of Scripture in regards to what it discusses and what it talks about. We're currently at the well, if you will, and there's a little bit of a problem, a little bit of an uprising. Jethro's daughters are there. They're tending to the flock, but there are some stragglers that come in, and those men are causing trouble with Jethro's daughters. Moses is there. That's what we find in this particular passage of Scripture. Moses kind of takes lead. He takes charge in the situation. He helps to water the animals, and of course then ends up getting a job, and that's what we see. Desert places are the site of both mighty miracles and great training. It's so important each and every Wednesday for us to pause just for a moment to discuss this and just to think about this. But when you go through the desert, when you go through the difficult time, when you go through the trials of life, it is so important for you to understand that God is looking at two different things. He's looking at awarding you with great miracles or with mighty miracles, or it may be that you're in a specific time, a time of training, great training, where God is trying to teach you. No doubt Moses in the desert experienced both of these philosophies, and he learned from that training. He saw the miracles of God. God did some great things while Moses was there in the wilderness, in the desert. We said, number one, Moses was alone. Moses didn't have a lot of people go with him. Now, when he was in the palace, he had a lot of people with him. He had people around him all the time. Make sure you have it in your notes. If you don't have your notes, grab a new copy on the back table. These thoughts are important in our Wednesday night Bible studies, and we're going to make sure that you get it. Number one, Moses was alone. We live in a day and age where we are afraid of being alone. We don't like it when we're by ourselves. We don't like it when not everyone else is around us. We don't like it when there's not someone there in our corner, so to speak, cheering for us and pushing us to continue and to get things accomplished. Sometimes we find ourselves in this same place that Moses found himself, and that was alone. This character, as well as others that we have discussed, find themselves alone. How they respond to that is so much different. There's such a difference in regards to response when we find ourselves alone. What happens when we are alone? What happens when we're in that particular place and we find ourselves alone? Loneliness, sadness from being apart from other people. We talked about it a great deal. Letter A, we say, or said, he was exiled from Egypt. Remember, this wasn't just solely a choice. We keep saying this every week, but it's so important. He didn't just up and one day say, hey, I want to leave Egypt. No, he had to leave Egypt. He did choose to leave, yes, I understand that, but he chose because he had to. Pharaoh was on his heels, Pharaoh was after him, he had killed a man, and he was running from those people in Egypt because he knew that they knew what he had done. He tried to cover it up, but he was not successful. We talk about this tragic train accident, man who was driving the train on the cell phone, missing the signs and causing the accident. So often when it comes to spiritual applications of life, we're not focused on what's at hand. We're not focused on where we need to be. Our focus is drawn away from us because of all the other things that surround us, and those things become a distraction to us, keeping us from what's more important. We live in a society where it's getting harder and harder to unplug and disconnect. How long has it been since you checked the socials? How long has it been since you've been on the social networks? How long has it been since you unplugged, since you disconnected from certain things that clamor for your attention. Focus is important. What we're remaining focused at is very important. This particular character went through a tough time, right? He went through a difficulty on major occasions, several times in Bunyan writes Pilgrim's Progress as a response to that. Why? Because he wasn't going to stop preaching. He was locked up in prison, and if he's going to be in prison, he might as well make the most of it. How often do we have that mentality? How often do we look at any given situation that way and say, I might as well make the best of it. I'm alone. I'm not where I want to be, but I got to make the best of what God is allowing me to go through. We said letter B, Moses was employed in the wilderness. He was employed in the wilderness. God didn't leave him hanging. God didn't leave him out to dry. No pun intended, being in the desert, being in the wilderness. He gave him an opportunity. He allowed him to find employment. That employment was with Jethro. When he helped out his daughters, he obviously wanted to hire Moses and wanted to make sure that he was taken care of. He was employed in the wilderness. This time of preparation is needed before greater opportunities and blessings can be received. So important for us to pause and to think through this idea and this understanding that people go through difficulties as a part of preparation for greater opportunities. Blessings that can be afforded, things that can be received. Too often we as Christians are distracted, complaining, griping, whatever the case may be, and we don't see the opportunities that are around us, the opportunities that God has afforded to us, and the reason is because we're missing the preparation time. And when we miss the preparation, when we miss the heartache, when we miss the trial, when we miss the burden, when we miss the prep work that God lays out for us, it's so much easier for us to miss the blessings, to miss the opportunities. And I wonder how often we think of it that way. Are you missing received blessings because you missed the preparation? You were too busy complaining about it. You were too busy wishing it wasn't there, trying to wish it away, whatever the case may be. But because of the way you responded, because of the way you reacted, you didn't receive the blessings either. So much of what God does for us is prep work. See the need and take the lead, right? That's what Moses did. Moses looked at the situation with Jethro's daughters and the animals that were there that needed to be watered. He looked at that situation. He saw that there was a need there, and he went at it. He took the lead. He got busy. He jumped in, and rather than talking about it, rather than complaining about it, he saw a situation with a need, and he became the solution. Are you listening to me? He became the solution to the problem, not the problem. You do understand from this story that Moses could have very well been a part of the problem. These men were causing trouble. Moses could have jumped right in there with them. But rather than doing this, Moses said, no, that's not the direction we need to go. Moses saw what was needed, and he took the lead in that situation. He became a solution. Number two, we said Moses was humble. It's a difficult thing for us to experience, a difficult thing for us to go through. Forced humbling, if you will. Numbers chapter 12 and verse number 3. Now the man Moses was very meek above all the men which were upon the face of the earth. It's interesting to see this meekness, this definition, if you will, of strength that is under control. And brother, here it's easy to see in the beginning stages of Moses' life, there was no meekness. Because that strength wasn't under control, right? That strength was on display as he rose up and killed a man with his bare hands and then buried him in the sand, hoping that nobody would ever find him, nobody would ever know the difference. There was no meekness there. But Moses becomes that humbled character that we know so well. But it took some training. It took some preparation. It took some time of learning, some time of prep work, some time of training, some time of education in regards to all that was going on. And God used this opportunity to explain to Moses the character that he needed to be. Humility was brought because, letter A, we said Moses realized he was no longer a prince. Oh, we spent a great deal of time discussing it. As a prince, Moses experienced lots of things. Namely, there were a lot of people around him that thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread. He was the best thing that ever happened to Egypt. Whatever, you fill in the blank. But Moses was something special. But when he left the palace, when he left Egypt, he wasn't anything special anymore. He had killed a man, and what people thought of him had changed drastically. We talk about these men. These men were willing to give up a lot of things in their life as Moses transitioned from being a prince, as it were. We talked about these 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence and how that they were captured by the British and tortured. Their homes were burned and ransacked. They had sons who were killed and captured during other wars, and they experienced tremendous difficulty. But that often is what God uses to teach us. Oftentimes, we go through the struggle as part of preparation. These men were all in, as we joked earlier on that hymn that we chose for tonight that we were singing. We were all in, right? We were excited about it. We were afraid of how it would turn out, but we sang it anyway. These men were in it. They were in something a whole lot more than just singing a song. A whole lot more than just singing a hymn. They knew their fortunes were on the line. They knew their honor was on the line. They knew who they were and what people knew of them. They knew all of that was on the line, but still they stepped up and they signed their names. They were committed. Question is tonight, are we committed as these men were committed? As a part of this humility, not only did he leave the palace, not only did he leave off being a prince, no longer was he a prince, but new material, letter B, he was now a shepherd. Make sure you get that in your notes. He was now a shepherd. Now, there's nothing wrong, Brother Nathan, with being a shepherd, unless you were once the prince. And then it's seen as a little bit of a demotion. Hey, you over there with all those sheep. What's your name? I'm the prince. I'm the shepherd Moses. You mean you used to be a prince? Oh yeah, but that was so long ago. Seems like it was a whole lifetime ago. Right? Can you imagine the excuses? Can you imagine how he's trying to sugarcoat it? Can you imagine how he's trying to make it not make him feel so bad? He once was here, and now he's here. Again, nothing wrong with being a shepherd, unless you were at one time the prince. He's now a shepherd. This is a part of his humbling. This is a part of his humility that he is learning. The experience of learning humility and being a humbled person was not something that would come natural to Moses. Not a man who would rise up in his strength no doubt he was not easily brought to this state of humility. But God said, you got to get there. You've got to get to that place. You've got to get to the place where you understand what it means to experience humility in your life. To be humble in your life. When we think of Moses, we think of Moses leading 3 million Israelites through the Red Sea and into the wilderness. It's very easy for us to forget that just prior to this great accomplishment, Moses was a shepherd. From prince to shepherd, and now up to leader of the children of Israel. Why? Because he was willing to learn the lessons. He was willing to go through the preparation. He was willing to be schooled and to be educated, if you will. Prior to leading the children of Israel through the Red Sea, we must be mindful of the fact that Moses had spent literally 4 decades as a shepherd on the backside of the desert. And guess what? Nobody cared. Nobody cared. I don't think they were pulling up Facebook on their laptops in Egypt to try to find out what Moses was up to these days. They weren't reaching out and saying, hey, has anybody heard of Moses? Oh yeah, man, I keep track of him. He is on the backside of the desert for 40 years as a shepherd. You wouldn't believe the awesomest thing happened when he left being a prince, he became a shepherd. If we could just learn to be like Moses. No, I don't think there were many people saying that. I don't think there were many people who wanted to be that person. But what they didn't understand is those 40 years were necessary. What they didn't understand is that preparation was necessary. Oh, it may not have been everything that they wanted it to be, or everything that some people would have it cracked up to be in their life. But the truth of the matter is, God said, I need to use this time to teach you and to train you. Imagine the lessons that God personally taught Moses in this time when he was on the backside of the desert. It's often been said that God was using this time to teach Moses where he needed to go and how to get through, navigate from point A to point B. Because he went there one time, he could do it again with the children of Israel. We don't know all the lessons that God saw fit to teach Moses. But we know that those 40 years were jam-packed, full of lessons. There was nobody for Moses to call on other than God. God was teaching the lessons. If Moses didn't like the way the instruction happened, then the only person Moses could cry to was God. A lot of times we don't like the training. A lot of times we don't like what we're experiencing. A lot of times we don't care for what we're personally going through. But listen to me carefully. There will be a good day in our life when we figure out that it is God who determines the preparation, not us. God is the one who does the instructing. And God is the one, watch this, God is the one who knows exactly what we need. You don't know what's down the road. You don't know what's happening 6 months from now. You don't know what's happening in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years. In most cases, and I don't say this to be critical, but in some senses I do. In most cases, you don't have a plan of where you see yourself in 5 years. But God does. God does. Where do you see yourself next year at this time? Well, it just all depends on where the path takes me. Really? Okay. Because my understanding from the Scripture is God knows what the next point is. God knows where you're going to be. God knows what you're going to be going through. And God is using the journey, and watch this, even if it takes 40 years, God is using the journey to train you for the next point, for the next spot, for the next whatever. What happens in this 40-year span literally molded Moses to become the leader that we all recognize. Let's talk about Moses. What do you know about Moses? Oh, man, Moses is one of the greatest leaders out of the whole entire Bible. That's great. And it took him 40 years alone. Well, let's be honest. He wasn't really alone. He had a bunch of sheep to keep him company. On the backside of the desert, old shepherd Moses, demoted from prince, kicked out of Egypt and the palace, and here he is in all of his radiant beauty. Look at me! Who are you? I'm Moses. I'm nobody. I'm learning. I'm learning, no doubt Moses would think to himself, I'm learning what it's like to be nobody. Nobody's special. Nobody's special until God gets involved. And then through the power of God, as is the case with all of us, Moses becomes somebody very special. Humility. Humble. Luke chapter 16 and verse number 10, he that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much, and he that is unjust in the least is unjust also in much. Matthew 25 and verse 21, his Lord said unto him, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of the Lord. It's almost as if it is a law in God's way. And that law is simply this. If we are faithful in little, we will have the opportunity to be faithful in much. I used to think and I used to say that if we are faithful in little, we will be faithful in much. But the truth of the matter is that is not completely accurate. Because a lot of times we're faithful in the little, but when we are given the opportunity to move up, we fail. We falter. When the opportunity is granted to us, we must make the right choices. 40 years in the backside of the desert, and God says, hey, it's time to go and tell Pharaoh, let my people go. How'd that turn out? It's time. God comes to us and God says, you've been so faithful. It's time. And how often do we mess it up? The opportunity is afforded to us. The law is true. If we are faithful in the little, God will give us the opportunity to be faithful in much, but we still must continue to make the same right choices. We must must be faithful to push ahead. Perhaps it was Moses' faithfulness as a shepherd that prompted God to choose him to be the leader of his people. One thing is certain, God is looking for faithful people. Proverbs 20 and verse 6 asks the question, a faithful man, who can find? A faithful man, who can find? Regardless of the task that God gives you to accomplish right now, it is imperative that you find faithfulness, that you find the ability to be faithful in the task and to complete it. Moreover, it is required in stewards that a man be found faithful. This particular character was a leader in the imperial army. Hiru Anodo. He was formerly relieved of his duty because of things that he did that were not pleasing. When he was relieved of his duty, he left and went into hiding. There's a book out about him. He was one of the last people to ever surrender after the war. In fact, Brother Henry, he didn't want to surrender that. Because he thought what was done to him was wrong, and he felt that he was not technically out of the military, and so he felt that he would fight. And that he did for a long time. You see, he had never been officially notified of the war's end. And so he continued his resistance on every hand, hiding in the mountains in the Philippines. It is said he did not give in until his former commanding officer was located and sent to him personally. He would never quit. He would never surrender. He was found faithful and shares his story in a book that was written about the events. How faithful are you? You know, we often toot our own horns, so to speak. And I have a philosophy about that, by the way. My philosophy is simply this: to him that tooteth not his own horn, to him it remaineth untooted. Because we live in a world where people don't like to toot anybody's horn. But the truth of the matter is, we got a lot of people going around tooting their own horn. How faithful are you? As you toot your own horn about your faithfulness, how faithful are you? Are you that faithful to the cause? Those 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence, are you that faithful to the cause? What would it take to get you to lose your faithfulness? 40 years? The backside of the desert? Demoted from prince to shepherd? What would it take? Moses went through a lot of difficulty. But Moses understood that if he could be faithful in the little things, that God would take care of him. And take care of him is exactly what God did. We so often focus on the end of the story when we think of Moses. But I think what God focuses on, I think what even Moses himself would focus on, would be the beginning stages of the story. Because that's what molded Moses into the man that he became. No matter how difficult it became, no matter how hard it was, Moses remained faithful. to the cause of Christ. I encourage you to do the same. Let's pray, shall we? Dear Jesus, we